When the gold rush happened in the mid 1800s in California, it's an often stated saying that few people got rich except the people who sold the pickaxes and the shovels. The analogy can be made to the domain name industry. Want to find out who's positioned well for the next gold rush and how you might be able to benefit? Stay tuned. I have 3 short sponsor messages before we get into today's show. First, if you have a great domain name and nothing to show when people visit, you're missing out on potential advertising revenue, leads, and partnership opportunities. Nichewebsites.com can build you a site quickly with a price option to suit any need. But as their tagline says, they don't just build websites, they build businesses. Second, if you're buying or selling a domain name or a portfolio and you want an estimate of its value, Estimate.com is the place to go. Just like you'd visit Zillow.com to get an estimate of a house value, Estimate.com provides key information about the most important statistics so you can make an informed decision based on data. Finally, DNX.com is a domain name exchange that uses a reverse auction platform to provide fair market prices for quality domain names that are manually filtered by an experienced broker. At DNX.com, domain prices drop until someone decides the price is right. But don't wait too long or the domain you love might be purchased by someone else. All 3 sponsors have a clickable banner in the upper right-hand corner of DomainSherpa.com. Here's your program. Hey everyone, my name is Michael Seiger and I'm the publisher of DomainSherpa.com, the website where you come to learn how to become a successful domain name entrepreneur and investor directly from the experts. In the mid-1800s, tens of thousands of individuals flocked to California to strike it rich in the gold rush. But more fortunes were made by the people who sold pickaxes and shovels, the tools needed to find the gold. Similarly, with the 1,700 new top-level domains coming online in the next few years, the ones most likely to make the fortunes are the utility providers, including registries and back-end operators such as VeriSign, Neustar, Affiliates, and CentralNic. We're going to learn about the history of one of these registry service providers, about the industry from this perspective, and how you might be able to benefit from it. Today, we're joined by Ben Crawford, the CEO of CentralNic, a company that provides registry services, distribution, and strategic consulting for new top-level domains, CCTLDs, and SLDs. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. Happy to be on the show.
Ben, let's start with where you are today, and then I want to go back and find out a little bit about the history of CentralNic because it's a really interesting story. And then we'll finish up the interview with some questions about where you see the industry heading. I mentioned in the intro that you're a provider, CentralNic is a provider of registry services. From a domain name system standpoint, for people that know very little about how the domain name systems work, what does a registry service provider do?
Sure, no problem. So a registry service provider really plays 2 roles. On the one hand, we're the distributor and wholesaler of domain names. So for the retailers, the public-facing companies that everyone's familiar with, the GoDaddies, Network Solutions, and their equivalents all around the world, registry service providers are the companies that supply the domain names to those companies. So we're the intermediary between the rights holder that actually has the rights to the domain name and the registrars. And in some instances, obviously, the registry service provider also owns the rights to domain names. So, for instance, VeriSign has the right to .com as well as being the distributor for .com. And then the second piece that a registry service provider does is it runs the DNS, the domain name system, which is essentially the infrastructure that makes the domain names work. That when you click on them, the links actually work and they bring up the right page. Mm-hmm. And so we essentially run 2 systems as a registry service provider. The registry system, which allows the registration, the transfer of domain names and so on, which includes like the Whois system and the zone generator and that kind of thing. And then secondly, the DNS system, which is like a global infrastructure running a database of which connects up the actual domain names with the IP addresses that they relate to.
Okay. So that makes perfect sense. I think most people can identify with the .com. They type in a domain name .com and somehow their browser knows to go to the right website. VeriSign is the registry of the .com, so they are the ones that actually will assign a domain name to a registrant or a person or an entity that wants to register it. But then they're also the DNS. They also distribute the domain name to the basically the GoDaddies and network solutions of the world to sell them. And
Okay.
so, what top level domains does CentralNic operate today? We know that VeriSign operates .com and .net and
Yep.
.name and those. What
Yep.
ones does CentralNic operate?
CentralNic, we really have three different types of domain extensions that we run. So firstly, we run two country codes, CCTLDs, and they are .la and .pw.
Mhm.
And so we're the registry backend provider or registry service provider for those two. And .la is the country code for the Lao People's Democratic Republic, the country in Indochina. And we work very closely with the Department of Post and Telecommunication there, who have responsibility for their country code. But what we do is we're their overseas, essentially we're their exporter. And so what we do is we make .las available in the United States, where it's used mostly for Los Angeles, but also for Louisiana. At the moment, a real exciting and growing area is Latin America, and a lot of people in Latin America love .la for Latino, for Latin America, and so on. It works really well, and there's some very significant companies that are using .la for that, like Intel, for instance. And also, .la is very popular in China, where the word "la" is like an exclamation mark. So people love to have that at the end of their domain. And there are other markets around the world, as you can imagine, in many parts of the world, they like LA because it's about the LA lifestyle. So tanning salons, acting classes, those kinds of things all over the world use .la for those reasons. So we're also then the distributor for .pw, which is originally the country code for the Republic of Palau, which is a republic in the Pacific. And essentially we are the distribution partner that makes that domain available through registrars all over the world. As many of you probably know, it was relaunched earlier this year, or launched for the first time actually earlier this year. And there are now hundreds of thousands of these domains being used all over the world. So that's our country codes at the moment, and we're very interested in getting more country codes and working with governments. We have, I think, a good track record of keeping the governments happy and understanding what their issues and priorities are, at the same time as giving the consumers all over the world like clever domains that are really suitable for all sorts of purposes. Then we also have a very large portfolio of second level domain extensions. And essentially, our company pretty much invented this, and it's been the lifeblood of our business for years. So we distribute domains that end, for instance, .us.com, .eu.com, and so on. We actually have 28 of these kinds of extensions. The most recent ones we've launched this year are .africa.com, .in.net for India, and in addition to those, so we have the CCTLDs and the SLDs. We also have GTLDs, and we've been selected as the registry service provider partner by applicants representing 60 applications for new GTLDs. And some of our partners there are people very well known in the domain industry. Daniel Nagari with his .xyz.college.now, Ray King, who's doing .wiki, .inc, and has 7 additional applications in contention. Jay Westerdahl, and and a number of other applicants. And then we're also working with some very large companies on their .brand GTLDs, where essentially they're going to get a domain and use it to create a universe of websites that they will control for themselves. And some of those include The Guardian, the British newspaper and media company, William Morris Endeavour, the biggest talent agency in Hollywood that have clients like Lady Gaga and Jude Law and Matt Damon and so on, and some of the biggest companies in the world, specifically ones in the Middle East, including Saudi Telecom, Kuwait Finance House, Qatar Telecom, and Etisalat, the Emirati telco. So we actually cover the whole range, and I think really we're probably the only registry service provider that covers that kind of breadth. So at the moment we have domains using 30 different uh, uh, domain extensions that we're distributing today, and we expect to get, we have another 25 of our GTLDs are uncontested, and we're expecting to get more. And then on top of through the contention resolution process, and then on top of that, we also expect to get more as well as GTLD applicants decide that they actually want to switch over and use CentralNic for their distribution.
Yeah, and that's possible. People could have put in their ICANN application, paid their fees, gone through the contention process, or been approved using one of the other registry service providers, but before they launch, they can actually switch to somebody else like CentralNic.
They can and they have.
All right, excellent.
And soon there'll be some announcements.
Great. So you mentioned 30 top level domains, some of which are country code TLDs like .la and .pw. You've got your own second level domains. You've got your potentially new 60 top level domains. Of the ones that you're currently operating today, how many does CentralNic actually own? Are you the registry of, in addition to being the registry service provider?
23.
23?
Yep.
And those include.
So we own. So we and I guess and for domain investors, this is kind of one of the interesting stories. We own the domains that we're using to sell third level domains from, and including, so we actually own us.com. So we got a fantastic portfolio of domains. We own 18 two-letter.com domains, and they're all country codes.
Yeah.
So EU.com, DE.com, CN.com for China, IU.com for Russia, BR.com for Brazil. So the founders of our company basically bought most of these domains between 95 and 2000 when they came up with this business model of selling third level domains, and they got proof of concept very quickly. So as early as 95, it was clear this was a good business. People wanted these domains, people liked them, and exactly, we've got websites that have been around for like 18 years using our domains. And so yeah, so we own 23 of them outright.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal inventory, and I'd love to learn more about the beginnings of that. I ran those domain names through Estibot just to get an order of magnitude of the assets of the that CentralNic owns in addition to operating, and it came out to over $5 million. From your standpoint, do you think that's an undervaluation of the assets that you own?
We've been offered $8 million for US.com.
Yeah, so I would say it's an underestimate.
We turned it down. Obviously, it's clearly worth more than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
How many domains in total, Ben, are currently registered by registrant across the 23 domain names that CentralNic owns and operates?
I think one of the benefits of being a private company running your own registry is we don't have to divulge any of that information. So that it's a benefit of being a private company that we keep all that to ourselves. But obviously some very big companies there. A couple of years ago we did a competition for the best .uk.com domain and website built on a .uk.com domain, and some of the finalists include like Microsoft, Avon. They have an incredible site on avon.uk.com. It's their main site in the UK. It's advertised on TV every single day in United Kingdom. It ranks really high for terms like cosmetics and so on.
Mhm.
Um, but in the end, the prize just went to a company that just had a very clever application that they built where you key in a particular phrase or word that really means something to you, and they create an artwork from it, deliver it framed to your house. So it ended up not going to any of the big guys, but going to kind of the cleverest application. So we have a lot of great companies that use our domains.
So, we mentioned selling CTTLDs, which makes sense. And if people want to rebrand those CCTLDs to other locations, I understand that. And the new TLDs want to use a proven system like registry system like CentralNic to operate there so that they don't have to worry about the technology. But
Yes.
the second level domains on domains that you own or others own, why do people want to buy third level domains on that? Why would somebody want to buy domain.us.com rather than just buying a .us or a .com?
Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. One is so obviously for some of our domains like .eu.com actually was launched I think 4 years before .eu. So one of them is we've been around for a long time. It's a very long-standing a product that has got a proven track record over decades to work very well. Um, I guess one so there's a few things. Obviously, availability. Um, if you have a company or a new product or a promotion, it has a specific name, and you cannot and you prefer .com, which obviously it's very clear most people do. Um, if that .com is not available, either because a domain investor has got they want to charge you thousands of bucks for it, or someone else has already built a website on it, then what do you do? And obviously one of the possibilities is to look for a good substitute, and a large segment of the population feels that for instance .us.com is a great substitute for that. It's you still get the .com ending, which means it'll still come up in searches all over the world. Unlike if you have a country code ending, for instance, and so availability is a good thing. The fact that .com is somewhere in the mix is always viewed as very attractive as well. And so I'd say that those are some of the main reasons. But when you also look at it, you can see that we've done the math roughly, and we reckon there's got to be over 30 million domains that are third level domains, particularly when you look at all the country codes that are doing the same thing. And some of the countries have been very inventive and clever and used quite a lot of second level domain extensions in order to create lots of third level domains. Brazil has been, China clearly has been with their .bj, .cn for Beijing and so on. So they're already doing like city third level domains and so on. While the GTLD world has kind of gradually crept into this and done it in quite a small way and so on. There are many countries who've been out there and done lots of very interesting things, and we like to feel like we're part of that SLD world. It's not a world that I'd say has traditionally attracted a lot of domain investors, and there's a simple reason for that, and that is these domains typically don't get type-in traffic.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean they're not a great domain to advertise. They can be very memorable. You can get short names. I mean, another reason that people really like their SLDs is you can get keywords, and you can get keywords at a normal retail price. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars to get them. So if you've got a website, you want to optimize for certain keywords, and you can have those keywords in the actual and have exact matches to it.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, these are all attractive things. So there's actually a whole bunch of reasons, and I guess that brings it to about 15% of all websites or domain names use third level domains of one kind of or another. So they're a very interesting area and an area with a lot of creativity, and we like to feel we're part of that movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And let me ask you about, so I did some research on CentralNic, and I read that your distribution network for domain names goes across 1,500 registrars and 100,000 of their resellers. Are those numbers still correct today?
Yeah, well, we obviously can't count the actual resellers because if we sell a domain to a wholesale registrar, they don't actually tell us who they're distributing it to. But it's actually our names are available to more resellers than that. When you consider that we're fully integrated with and supply domain names to all the big companies that have reseller channels, the Enoms and the Direct Eyes and the Key Systems and so on and so forth, the Internet X's of the world, and but by integrated with 1,500 registrars, that means, just to be really specific, it means their engineers have spent the time to integrate their website with our databases so that when you do a search on their website, it will query our databases and display a result on their website as to whether that domain's available or not. So that's like a direct connection. And the reality is there aren't many companies that have that many direct connections to that many websites around the world. Obviously, VeriSign does, no doubt about it, because there probably hardly any registrars or resellers in the world that don't want .com to sell it. But for us, it's the result of years and years and years of work developing these relationships, and we've been able to do it because we have domains like local domains for all the key markets all over the world. So in Japan, .jp.net, in China, .cn.com, India.in.net, and so on. So it's like country by country, we've created an interesting alternative domain to the country code, and built out a registrar network in those countries. So the upshot of that is we have a fantastic global distribution network, which means that our GTLD clients and the CCTL and the repurposed CCTLDs that want to sell globally can have immediate, instant access to all of these vendors all over the world that are technically integrated with us. We have great relationships with them. They already have accounts open with us, so they don't have to do any of the work that they'll have to do for someone that's just starting out trying to build out their own network. We're really just pushing more and more inventory out to an existing family of registrars that we've worked with for years.
So let me ask you about that, Ben. I had Ope Udasan from Africa.com on a few weeks ago talking about how they're selling third-level domains,
Yep.
like safari.africa.com, using CentralNic and reaching all of those resellers and registrars. And you mentioned Daniel Nagari, who's been on here in the past talking about .xyz and .college, which are approved to go through. When
Yep.
any of those registries begin to use CentralNic, does their entire portfolio, does all of the available domain names immediately become available on all of those registrars like GoDaddy and register.com, or do
But,
the
well,
registrars have to sort of approve them before they start selling them?
no. They have to. They're I'd say they're latently available in their back end. So the thing is, they don't have to do any additional engineering work. They don't have to open up and fund any new accounts. And not only that, obviously, we know the people there. We know how they work, how they like to be delivered information, what kind of lead times they need. All of these things that make things run smoothly. But no, obviously, for each new domain extension that launches, there still is a piece of work that the registrars need to do. A couple. One is usually to adjust the front end of their website. So even if it's sitting there in the back end and you can technically register it, they need to make it visible. And then secondly, obviously, marketing is an important part of this. So it's important that the registrars then let their customers know. And there's two groups of customers. There's the ones that happen to be visiting their website during the period where they're promoting a new domain, and obviously there are the majority of them who aren't. So then we encourage the registrars to do outreach and let all of their customers know that this new domain is now available on their website. So I'd say you have many, many advantages in using us, but no, obviously registrars own and run their own business. They have their own priorities. We're obviously very sensitive. We're not trying to persuade the guy in Argentina to sell the Japanese domain, or vice versa. And Africa.com, it's a fantastic idea. We're going to see it in more and more registrars, obviously, particularly in Africa. Whether a registrar in Romania is going to sell it, I would say probably not, just because there's no demand for that domain there.
Yeah. All right, let's go back in time, Ben, and talk about the historical roots of CentralNic. When was CentralNic founded and by whom?
Very good. Well, this is a second hand. I wasn't around at that time, but the company was originally founded back in 1994, and it was a different company. Let's say the business was founded there, and it was really just founded on the insight of some British property developers who discovered the internet. Robert Pook being one of them, who's still with the company today, and discovered the internet when he took his kids to LA to Disneyland, and they were talking about it on TV, and he got interested in it, and he saw straight away, I guess the way many domain investors have, that it's a new type of property. And many of the principles that apply to investing in bricks and mortar property could well apply on the internet. But I guess one of his and the guys that he was working with really unique and really clever insights was, well, how about subdivision? If I bought the domain name UK.com, for instance, could I, or GB.com or US.com, could I subdivide that and sell many, many, many third level domains, and of course lease them out in the same way as you might property? And among those initial founders, one of them actually met John Postel, who at the time was pre ICANN with the U.S. Department of Commerce, looking after the domain name system and particularly the country code system, and discussed this with him, and came away very encouraged that, one, technically there's actually no difference between a say .co.uk or .uk.com as far as the DNS is concerned. It all works exactly the same. And secondly, encouragement that sure, private enterprise should get involved with this if it's all about increasing consumer choice and adding competition, and certainly at that point bringing prices down as well. So they basically built a registry system, or at that time it was a combined registrar system, and started selling third level domains, and found very quickly that they were readily accepted, and so then they had proof of concept. So then between 95 and 2000, they were like, great, well, let's go and get as many of these two-level countrycode.com domains, two-letter countrycode.com domains as we possibly can, and had this kind of global treasure hunt of tracking down the domain investors who'd picked up the two-letter, because obviously none of them was still with the registry,
right,
and finding them and cutting deals with them and so on to bring them all into the company that then was renamed CentralNic in 2000, as it was the concept was it was the NIC, the Network Information Center, that was central to the whole world. And so from there, really, the story of the company was about adding more and more registrars, and obviously with the beginning of the new century, the current model of having vertical disintegration between the registry and the registrar started, and CentralNic went down that path, and then actively started going around the world signing up registrars, and had some very important historical moments when we signed up some registrars like Enom and Network Solutions, and actually only this year GoDaddy, which has been a really very, very exciting event for us, because they're a fantastic company to work with. And so as the portfolio of domains developed, so too did the portfolio of registrars that we worked with. So that kind of, and then I guess it was about 5 years ago that the idea of maybe also distributing for third parties came about, and we started distributing .la, and then again this year .pw. A few of the SLDs that we distribute are owned by third parties as well. And I guess then I joined the company 4 years ago, and really with the focus of, well, how do we now become a player in the GTLD space? Because clearly, uh, when you look at VeriSign, its market capitalization, and the Warren Buffett's investing in it and so on, you can see, well, there is potential to grow in our business. There's potential to grow significantly. So how do we set down that path? And so we went out and won a whole bunch of GTLD contracts. And then, as you may know, we actually listed on the London Stock Exchange back at the beginning of September as well. So now we have some very significant investment funds as some of our shareholders, and we're obviously working with them to develop and grow the company and really take us to the next level.
So you did become listed just a couple of months ago on the London Stock Exchange, and you transitioned from private company to public company.
Indeed.
And in offering those shares to individuals that wanted to invest, you were able to raise money. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So
So
we didn't we didn't try and raise a very large amount of money at this stage. So we've raised £5 million, which is like $7.5 odd million.
Mhm.
And so our thinking with that, we've been very clear what we want to do with that money is with most of it is make some strategic investments in GTLD applicants. And our thinking here is obviously starting with our own clients, if they need some help getting through the auctions to ensure that they get the domain names that they've fought so hard to get this far on, then we're there to help them. And then obviously also some people who aren't our clients but who would be interested in coming and using our services as part of a package, we can say, well, we can help you with financing, we can also help you with distribution.
yeah.
And obviously with years of experience, I mean, we've launched 8 domain extensions in the last 3 years. Nobody else has launched any. So we've done 8 sunrises and 8 land rushes and whatever in the last 3 years. And so we actually have an awful lot of data which nobody else has. We have an awful lot of experience about what works, what doesn't work, how to explain things clearly, how much lead time people need in order to do things, and so on. So I think in addition to money and technology and compliance services, we can also help with a lot of advice and experience. We're always happy to share it because our approach with our GTLD clients is we want them to succeed, and we will help them in any way we can to do it. So we will pitch them to the registrars, and we will help them with their sales collateral material and their marketing material, and so on. We'll help them with financing, because for us, every single one, it matters a lot that they succeed. We're not in the position where we already have the biggest domain in the world. So, and it's no criticism of VeriSign at all.
Sure.
It's just that we're, I guess, view our clients as partners,
Yeah.
and we want to be a good partner.
So potentially 60 new top-level domains coming online in the next couple of years, maybe even more with registries that are switching to CentralNic as their back-end and distribution system. How many employees do you have today, and how many will you need to hire in order to fulfill all of these new partners or customers, registries that are coming on board?
Well, I like to think of us like the Craigslist of registry service providers. Like we're very, very focused on automation, and I believe we do an excellent job. So for us, the less employees we have, the better job we're doing. That said, we've got a great team of employees, including some who've been with us for over 10 years. And I think the beauty of this is we've studied this question a lot, because obviously a lot of people have invested money in our company, and we don't think we're going to have to hire a huge amount more people We've hired six in the last 2 months since we listed,
Mm.
and we don't see ourselves having to hire a huge amount more because, as I mentioned, we already launched 8 domains in the last 3 years. It's largely a technical and automated process that we've got down pretty pat.
Mhm.
Hopefully, we'll have to have a couple more customer service people and so on, just because of the sheer volume of work that we're doing.
Mhm.
And then really, it's not so much about hiring additional people to do the same old job that we're doing now. We think we can do that pretty well with the team we've got and just a couple more people. It's more about us thinking about what else could we be doing. And so we have some ambitions that we can't really talk about yet about launching some new businesses or some new services as part of our businesses. And those are the things which are going to take some additional stuff. And we may even look at acquiring some businesses as well.
Hmm. Oh, interesting. All right. I wish I could ask you more about that. So, do you see CentralNic requiring any infrastructure enhancements? Are you going to need to have a whole new data center to be able to support? I have no
Well,
idea how the infrastructure works. It just sounds like this enormous behemoth that you need to route all of these requests and bits flying throughout CentralNic's systems. Will the technology
that
need to improve and expand?
no, no. And the reason is this. When we decided to go for GTLDs, we realized that some companies had an advantage over us in that they're already doing it. So it was like, well, how can we demonstrate to people that we're at the same level as they are? And so we realized we have to bite the bullet and invest now. We have to build an ICANN GTLD um, specification registry system now. Wherever we're falling short today, and I'm not saying we were falling short from the standards of that day. Our system, like most CCTLD registries and some others, couldn't possibly run a GTLD, not because it wouldn't work, but because they're not up to the ICANN standards. And so we upgraded all of our systems. We also got ISO 27001 accredited, which is a data security global standard, and ISO 9001 accredited, which is a global quality standard. We also became the first carbon neutral registry. So we kind of went all out with investment to say, like, let's make our systems already at the standard they need to be so we could launch immediately and we could launch hundreds of GTLDs off the back of our system without having to buy another computer. And so we're there. And obviously that was a question that many investors asked of us when we were listing too, is like, don't you have a whole bunch of massive spending ahead of you? And I'm happy to say that it's behind us.
Excellent. So we talked about Africa.com selling third level domains using CentralNic. We talked about the TLDs that you own that you sell on, such as .uk.com, .us.com. Phenomenal domain names. With the new GTLDs coming out, what's your projection on second level domains like, domainsherpa.com coming to you over the next few years and launching to sell third level domains? Do you see it sort of staying consistent with the quantity per year that have happened in the past few years, or do you see it declining with the new GTLDs, or increasing as more people learn that they can actually launch a registry of third level domains using CentralNic?
Well, I'd say I wouldn't want to make people underestimate the difficulty of what it is that we do. It is it. I don't think there are any other companies in the world that actually have done what we do. Certainly, there are country codes who have been very creative and done lots of things on second levels and so on. But to do third level on a full word.com, I think .africa.com is the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because we got like one. It's a great one. It's such a good one. It's the name of the continent. So that's pretty that's almost unique in terms of how great that is as a domain for doing third levels. Um, So my view is, look, third levels is really an area of invention and experimentation and innovation, and we're definitely going to be there. And I think we're going to see all sorts of interesting things emerge. Um, I guess our perspective is people just have to have the right expectations of what they want to achieve. I can tell you, in our business, there's no such thing as like passive revenue. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to kick off a registry company and then go and sit on the beach. Like we work really hard, really long hours all the time because it's a complicated business. And so I think uh, the thinking is this, that you can have a quite small zone, or quite relatively small number of domains, be it on a GTLD or a CCTLD or an SLD, still have a successful business.
Mhm.
It's a smaller business, and it's like like a single malt whiskey supplier rather than Coca Cola. Like it can still, but you don't say, "Oh, I failed because I haven't sold as many bottles of Coca Cola." It's just I never, I set out to do this. So I think that that tends to be our approach. That we would encourage people to come to us, and people come to us all the time with ideas. And hopefully we try to be quite realistic with them and feedback about, well, this is the scale we think you could get to, or this is the amount of investment that you would need, and so on. And then some people make the call as, yeah, this is definitely for us. We're in it for the long haul. We're happy to invest. We're comfortable with that scale. And other people, it's not right for them. It's
Yeah.
the same thing as GTLDs. I mean, the successful ones will not necessarily be the ones that sell the most. They'll be the ones that have uh, got the right financing, the right amount of working capital, the right expectations, they're the people that'll be around for the long haul.
Yeah, great point. And the fact that you do own and operate 23 of these phenomenal domain names selling third level domains, that you've got all the data to show how many domain names are sold with what kind of marketing and how the
Exactly.
quality of the domain, so then you can compare it to others. Ben, there's been at least one very vocal critic online that claims that operating and selling third level domains on domain names like UK.com and US.com are confusing to consumers, and that in doing so, it's like a false designation of origin, false descriptions. What's CentralNic's view on selling third level domains on a UK.com or a US.com?
Well, it's not just our view. I'd say that the fact is that uh, they're great domains. There's a market for them. Large companies use them. There's no kind of confusion at all, any more than if you look at the Chinese government, you can buy a .cn, you can buy a .com.cn, a .bj.cn, a .sh.cn, and so on. They're not confusing their citizens into buying multiple domains or thinking they got one thing and got the other and so on. Not at all. It's just very clear that it's like telephone numbers. That there's multiple different possibilities, different endings, just as there are different beginnings. Like if you in New York, you can use 212 or 917 or 646 or 347 and so on. And so from our perspective, I think to be very clear, we are selling the domains that people want to buy. Um, Not everyone wants to buy them, but not everyone wants to buy a .biz or .info and so on. They're just one of the domains in the store. They have their advantages that are very clear. And obviously, as we mentioned, we've been going for almost 20 years. So, in other words, much longer than a lot of GTLDs and so on have been going, and some CCTLDs. Our domains are more popular than most CCTLDs, actually. And so, I know I think the word confused is more about, um, I think it's generally more about people who've been so focused on .com and a couple of other GTLDs that they've kind of been unaware that there's tens of millions of other domains that follow different rules and have different kinds of endings and so on. And I think people should be way more open-minded and have a look at the interesting things that people are doing in that space.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
So the 5 million pounds that you've raised as a result of being listed on the London Stock Exchange,
Yep.
you're going to use that for potentially making investments in some of the new GTLDs and bringing them on board. It provides a lot of opportunities for CentralNic. Has CentralNic taken any equity positions in new top-level domains yet, or are you still in negotiations?
We're still in negotiations, and we're still open to approaches. Because also, we're working with some of the biggest investment funds in the world now, so we're not limited to that amount of money. That's just the beginning.
Gotcha.
So we're very interested in talking to anyone that's interested in investment and improving their chances of winning, and not only winning their GTLD, but seeing it all the way through to being a very successful business.
Excellent. At the end of the show, I'll ask you for contact information for those who might be operating a GTLD or thinking about launching a third level domains on top of their second level domains, and we'll figure out how to connect you. If I were applying for a new top level domain today, I'd want to focus on my business and contract out the service with somebody that understands how back-end IT infrastructure works to ensure that it's up and running. But there are companies like Google, who applied for 101 top-level domains, and Uniregistry, Frank Schilling's new registry, that are building out their own infrastructure. Essentially, what took your team years to build this infrastructure and make sure that it's working and it's scalable and has all these connections. They're going to try and build it out themselves. How can companies have their infrastructure up and running and tested in time to actually launch those new top-level domains? Does that seem like it's reasonable to you, given your knowledge of how the system works?
Well, I'd say Google and Frank both are rather well resourced. So if anyone's going to be going to do well in this, I would think that both of them will, and obviously, both of them know an awful lot about domain names and the internet and so on as well. So I would think among the startups they would be very well positioned, but it's a massive amount of work. It's global, so you really you're talking about going to 100 countries around the world and persuading local retailers to take what you're selling and to pitch it then to their customers. That's a really serious amount of work. So I think, but why are they doing it? I think because they see what we have. Like, we have a distribution platform, and it's very, very valuable, and I think they want that. And who can blame them? I mean, if I were in their place, I would want that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do the registry service providers work in terms of making sure that the infrastructure operations are working? For example, does any government oversee CentralNic or VeriSign to say that your uptime is appropriate
I
for internet
well,
operations?
well, for GTLDs, ICANN does.
I can. Okay.
So you got a service level agreement with ICANN, and one of those requirements is 100% availability of the DNS, which basically means that companies in our business that provide the DNS have to have essentially global infrastructure which is redundant again and again and again and again to protect you against denial of service attacks, against natural disasters, and so on. So essentially, if you have data centers all over the world wiped out, you still have enough additional ones that the services are diminished in any way. So the standards are very high. CCTLDs are not necessarily governed by that, and nor are SLDs. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, so I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this interview, Ben, and they're thinking, well, I've got a phenomenal domain name that I've always thought about selling third level domains on.
Yep.
Can you talk about how the pricing is structured at CentralNic? If I own a domain name that I'd like to offer to sell third level domains and I'd like to potentially use CentralNic as my registry service provider, how does that shape up, and what kind of structure and magnitude of costs are associated with it?
Well, I'd say that there isn't a off the shelf offering really from us. It's a matter of having a good look at it, coming up with what we think is it together is a business strategy that is going to work, and pricing is part of that. Like there's no point in me saying, well, I'm gonna charge people, $10 a domain if they want to retail it at five. Um, and the thing is, they may have to retail it at five if they want to get any kind of market share in a market like China or even Germany and so on, where the pricing is rather low. So yeah, so what I'd suggest is give us a call, talk to us about what your ideas are and so on. I think people often have a they don't realize how price sensitive the market is.
Hmm.
I think some GTLD operators are probably suffering from that a little bit too. That I guess because we're out there every day seeing what sells, and we have the great ability to experiment, to do different price promotions, do things in different countries, and get a real feel for what works and what doesn't work around the world. And so we're happy to put that leaning towards ensuring the success of some people. But I'll tell you, a bunch of people will approach us with that, and I will advise them not to do it.
Hmm.
Just and based on our experience, that because once you start, you can't. This is the thing. You can never go back. You sell somebody a third level domain off your domain. You have to support that for as long as their website wants to continue. So it's a serious decision, and we try and always make that very well. We don't try. We make it contractually very, very clear to people that there is never any going back if they decide to go down this path.
Yeah, very interesting. So if I owned a domain name and I said I'm going to commit to it for, forever, or as long as that there are people renewing their third level domain on the domain name that I own, is there a structure by which I would not have to pay any money up front to CentralNic and we could actually become partners from a revenue generating side?
Potentially. Yep.
So you're open to a partnership, you're open to
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
a lower percentage going to CentralNic and me paying money up front to use your services. Anything's flexible
Yeah.
and it all depends on the situation.
Exactly. We're flexible. I think that we very much like to find partners that we want to work with as partners and have a stake in their success. Rather than we don't view ourselves honestly as like a back end provider or like a technical supplier. We like to play a greater role and help ensure that the business we involve with ends up as a good business with everybody happy.
Makes sense. So here's the final question for you, Ben. As I mentioned at the top of this show, research has showed that the merchants in the gold rush, California gold rush of the mid 1800s, made far more money than the miners during the gold rush. On average, half of the gold seekers made a modest profit, but most made little money or lost money. As you compare the history of the gold rush to the new GTLD launch, do you think history is going to repeat itself? Or do you think that we're going to take a whole new track?
Um, yeah, no, well, I think that history has repeated itself many times since the gold rush. No, I honestly believe we're extremely well positioned. I think the words that we use now is platform. So we own the platform, and owning the platform is a very good place to be, and we're already a profitable company. So for every domain that sells, we make a profit already. Other companies that have break even far ahead of them are obviously in a different position from us. I would say, however, again, we don't view ourselves as just selling an instrument or a service to enable someone else to risk their money and see if they can win or not. We want to be much more helpful than that and give them the best advice, the right deal, and the assistance that they need to succeed. Again, I can tell you it's not just third level domains. There are GTLD applicants who've approached us that we've said, well, actually, we don't think you're right for us
Mm.
because we want to work with people that will succeed. And then when we've decided to go down that route, we're going to help them.
Great. If someone wants to get in touch with you, Ben, to discuss top level domains and investment in their TLD, financing or operations of the registry, what's the best way to reach you or the person who's responsible in your organization?
I'm happy for people to reach out to me directly, and I've got a very difficult, complicated email address. It's ben@us.com.
All right.
So,
Ben
so
at us.com. All right. If you have additional questions, please post them in the comments section below the video, and I'll ask Ben to come back and answer as many as he can. Ben Crawford, CEO of CentralNic's, thanks for coming on the Domain Sherpa Show, sharing your knowledge of top-level domains and the operations of registries, and thanks for being a Domain Sherpa.
thank you, Mike.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.